just a little tryout to see that to try and improve just conversation, see whether I keep up with things in case anybody mentions anything at all. I haven't even got any specific topic to talk about as such, although I can quite easily come on to something. For many of you, well, for any of you who may have looked at any of my my content on this channel, you will have noticed that I talk lots about animals, about what we as a society, humans, do to animals. So, but I'm not going to necessarily talk about them as such. It just depends on. So I'm going to see whether I can come up with some sort of questions for myself, and I should have just written something down, but I'll probably make something up. Yeah. Well, I'll make something up until somebody else wants to come and say something different to me. So I will ask questions. Where am I? Where shall I start? See, you've got this little bit of fun around where you can see that I'm thinking about something, and I'm seeing whether I'll come up with something that. Oh yeah. When was the very first time that you can remember that some of the food that you were eating was an animal? And what was that animal? If you ever found out what it was. It can be difficult because of the times that you will have realized you might have been eating animals might not have been the time that you were told that you were eating an animal. Because of you could have worked it out before somebody told you. So I'm going to go. It's difficult to think about this. I really can't think of a specific time that somebody told me when I was eating an animal. I can't even remember it precisely. It would have been, I think, around 5 or 6 when I first realised that what I was eating was an animal. It might have been earlier than that, but that seems to be the sort of first time. And at the time, I do know that I didn't actually think about it that much. I knew about it, but I didn't say or think about it. And that's the way most of us are with that situation. But I suppose if we're told about it, it would have been more conscious and we would have felt, yeah, because of my thoughts about that we shouldn't be eating animals came after I had been eating animals for a time. And it was still, I mean, I did come to the thought that I shouldn't be eating animals, but I still carried on for another 10 years or more. Well, over 10 years after I had actually come to thinking that. I always imagined that it was wrong to consume an animal, even while I was still consuming them. And the first actual animals that I did stop having altogether was actually fish. And I think I'm pretty sure I stopped eating fish a good 4 or 5 years before I stopped eating meat. And the first thing that I remember about that was I was probably around about 12, something like that. And we were out at the markets and whatever. And I remember going into one of the markets and just the absolute stench of the fish was absolutely appalling. and they still are. They're still absolutely appalling, the smells from the fish. And that really that it was have been that going to that market when and smelling the fish that day was the time that stopped me from ever having fish again. I didn't even have it with fish and chips at all anymore. I never had fish with chips at all anymore. And that was from 12, uh, nearly 50 years ago. So, yeah, I've got a drink right here as well, so I'm keeping myself topped up. A nice little mug, this one. This one was from a nice half marathon that I did. And it's on the dates on the cup here somewhere. Where is it? Oh yeah, it would have been 2012, I think. No, 2013. It was for a half marathon along the White Peak Trail in Derbyshire. And the actual line that is on the mug, the actual line where it's show, if I don't know whether you can see it on there at all, but I think you can just see something. The start is up there at the top, and the finish is down there. So you've got nearly 10 miles of flat surface running for 10 miles, and then you've got three steep slopes to go down, and the last one is about a kilometre long slope down to the canal at Cromford. The canal, yeah, near enough the canal near Cromford. Uh, yeah, and it's really a really lovely place. Another, of course, all trails, no roads to cross or anything like that at all. Only 200 people because of the trail wasn't wide enough to accommodate many more with that many people going along it. Because it's still open to the public during the whole race. So you were constantly coming up and passing people walking one way or the other. So yeah, beautiful. And it's always May as well, May time. It won't be happening this year. They've not got it sorted again. So that's 2 years that event has not taken place. But it's an absolutely gorgeous half marathon if anybody ever wants to do it. Anyway, that took me off topic a bit, didn't it? See, uh, that's because of it was easier to switch between topics, and I'm doing that because of unless I've got people wanting to sort of talk or particularly wanting to hear a specific sort of thing, then I can only ever go on just what I feel like I want to talk about. So that was just useful because of obviously having the drink right here while I'm just doing a little bit of a live stream. Anyway, I went back to the. I will sort of try to keep some sort of constants on it, and then I'll go back to the animals and when I started to realise when I started eating animals, and even then, even when I did realise that a specific animal I was eating, I do not know what that animal was that I was eating. Um, I didn't look into it very much. I didn't think about it enough. I'd already been culturally indoctrinated into what was normal, natural, and necessary. Indoctrinated via parents and friends suggesting that animals needed to be eaten. Mostly never specifically because if it was taken as though it was so natural that there wasn't even a thought of questioning it. not until not until I did really think about it more. There was no thought about questioning it at all. Uh, so then I walked. What did I do? What did I do then? Uh, yeah, the other sort of thing that made me feel a bit more towards animals was our own pet dog. I never knew whose in particular it was. It wasn't. It seemed to be just the family pet. But I saw in that situation that the dog that we had as a pet was nothing like the pets that we have today. It was nothing like. It was not loved. It was. It, it was sort of semi loved, but we were separated from it. We only had a small place. It was a very small caravan that we were actually living at that time, and so there wasn't space really within the van itself for the dog to come. So the dog would be outside all the time, um, and tied up outside all the time because there was uh, no good fence. So there was a run with a lead that went up and down so that the dog could run up and down. Mick, his name was, uh, and I, I knew right there and then how bad that was. It was obviously it was horrible for Mick. It was absolutely horrible. But because of the way he was treated in that situation, kept outside, just left to be, well, certainly not a pet. He became a very angry dog. He would constantly be in anger, and numerous times he would break free from being tied. Numerous times, at least, well, almost on a monthly basis, and he'd be running around up and down the streets. At that time, there were lots of dogs that ran free. Uh, you're talking about the 70s, and there, there were literally packs of dogs that would run around the streets in lots of areas around the towns. Um, this and many of them were pets, but there was no people just did not look after their pets at all, um, and they didn't. The many were very badly treated by their owners, and even the best ones that I can say that Mick was a better treated dog, even though left in the conditions that it was in. But that's sort of that connection. The automatic connection. It understood what was happening. I understood that it was wrong that Mick was in them conditions. It was obviously wrong. I knew it, and it was only sort of when we moved home that things changed and got slightly better for him. But yeah, I mean, I can't really. I mean, I've blocked out a lot of what conditions he might have been in because of it did upset me a lot. It upset me uh, massively that this dog would be like this. But still, um, yeah. So to connect with the animals that I was consuming, that took a lot longer to happen. But it was the conditions that Mick was in that did sort of make me connect later on in the teens when I got to around about 20. And it was the connection then because of I mean, more or less until that time, I hadn't really properly seen any farm animals. And it was only once I'd started running that I started to see farm animals because of at that time we didn't do a lot of traveling. We didn't go very many places, and we didn't often see much of the countryside from where we were. So it was getting onto that when I'd started work and whatever that I started to sort of go places myself and do the running that took me past lots of farms. And automatically I saw that those animals in those fields were in as bad a conditions as what my dog had been in. Even though they're out in fields wandering around, I could see that they were even they were they seemed to be free, but they weren't because of everyone was in a field, entrapped in a field. They couldn't wander where they wanted to, and I knew that even my dog, that Mick, whenever he got off, he'd just wander anywhere. So any animal that's in a field is it wants to go. They want to go, just wander anywhere. They don't want to just stay in that same place. So that's where the connection sort of came from on that matter. Trying to think of the continuation of that because of I never really noted down when I stopped or started doing things at that time. So I don't have proper records of all that. I can only sort of go by what I can remember now. And at the time, I didn't consider that even when I gave up things like the stopping eating meat, I didn't consider that so massively important that I should try and remember exactly when it was. But I do know it was around about when I was about 20 that I stopped eating animal products as well. So that fish had stopped eating about 5 years before because of the stench of the smell that I smelt at the market. And yeah, but even the fish, when it came to the fish, um, I did yeah. That was another thing we did have some goldfish at a couple of times, and again, this was where I saw it was wrong as well because of even though it was a large bowl, I could see that it wasn't right that the fish should be in that small area. It was even less of an area than my dog could go at once whenever he got free, and you could see you could as automatically connected that the fish was actually in a way suffering. I didn't understand fully how it was suffering. I didn't fully understand that, but I could tell it was suffering. I knew it was suffering, and it's really only later that I've sort of that I felt that that would be because of every animal knows that there's somewhere beyond where the animal actually is, just like we do. We know wherever we are, there's more beyond where we are. All animals know that as well. Fish did. So it's yeah, you don't you just don't think of it too. You don't think of it like that. You really don't. See, I'm getting a bit confused on this at the moment because I'm really trying to think along the lines of the next thing that I should come along to. Um, See, this is more or less doing a little bit of a history thing, and of course, with a history without a written down memory of what was actually happening at that time. So, yeah, the things that happened from then was that I went into apart from going vegetarian at that time. I was then increasing the amount of running that I was doing. So that was getting more as well. And the running, I'd say that both with along with the vegetarian and the running started to do. I believe that those were two large health improvement times as well. Um, both those things I really felt by far better than had done all through school, even though I'd been very active during school itself, even not taking part in sports, but still active. So, so the running was is a big thing, and again, there's so many things to do with running that I'm not sure it is. The memory for that is probably even more muddled than what it is for vegetarianism, because of obviously vegetarian is relatively simple thing in that you're just removing the animal products and just taking notice of what is happening to animals on that basis. But yeah, when I started running, the way I started running was actually when I first started my first job, and that was because the place that I worked was 2 miles from my home at that time. So one day I started one week, and I thought, right, I'm going to start running just like that. I didn't even sort of plan it or anything like this. I just decided that was it. I'm going to start running. So the first day it goes, and I can run down the street and just get around the corner, and that's about it. I couldn't do much more. So I walked all the rest of the way to work. But each day for the next 2 weeks, I did ran more each time, just a little bit more each time. And by the end of the second week, I ran the whole distance, the 2 miles, without stopping. Now, when I'd done the runs to start with, I didn't do extra runs. When as soon as I'd stopped, that was it. I wasn't going to go any further. So that so I had a point that I knew that I had to reach the following day, which should really be a difficult thing because of. Um, but then again, it's like if you're running every single day, and the distance only got to 2 miles, so it is a doable thing to do it by just only increasing it little by little over those 2 weeks to get to the 2 miles. So that worked out quite well. And then I started running with a couple of friends at work and whatever. So that we got going on that, and we did a few things there. I mean, because of them, we did not only running, but we'd fit in a badminton, squash, and snooker, um, all within sort of the running phase as well. So we'd use the leisure centre to sort of run to or something like that, and then do the squash and whatever, and sometimes run back from them as well. So, but the working and everything like that was as energetic as the actual running itself, really, because it was warehouse work and there was lots of lifting, throwing, and climbing and everything like that to do with it. So really, it was quite all round fitness, really. So yeah, that helped quite a lot. Now then, yeah. So once we'd done that for a short while, I think around about 6 months, we've been doing running and other things as well, sort of thing. we all decided to just join a local run the athletics club. So went down to the to workshop areas as that was, and just joined with their group. And the first few sessions, I mean, it's quite strange that to some extent, um, the athletics clubs today take a little bit more care of their newcomers and whatever sort of thing. But I suppose in a way I probably went with the most difficult group in that they were the quickest group every time, uh, and it meant that for a good year of my first running, I was actually just hanging on to the slowest of the quickest runners at the back for nearly, well, yeah, maybe not quite a year, but it seemed to be that long because of obviously every time we went to the club, we'd go out for the run, and then I'd generally be doing running as quick as I could just to stay with them, and that I mean that actually brought me on faster than if I'd have gone with a slower group. But you don't think about that at the time. And I mean, I really wanted to run fast, so I've sort of forced myself to go along and chase the quickest because that's where I wanted to be. And yeah, that helped a heck of a lot, and it I mean, it did get to a point where I would be very much with them for quite a lot of the time, and even leading them around at times. So it was really, yeah, and that was absolutely enjoyable, a fantastic time. Um, just to know that you can sort of go out there, just go out, just run, not worry, I'm totally fine. So yeah, so and then during that time, number of competitions, mostly I think club competitions there were at that time. Uh, going a little bit further back when we first started running as a group, before the club itself, we'd decided to attempt the following year's London Marathon. This so we'd given us because of we'd started just before that year's first London Marathon, the very first one in I think it 1980, whatever. But we did enter for the following year's London Marathon and actually got in on the first time. Uh, yeah, so everything that we'd started really was just we'd sort of set that London Marathon as an incentive to carry on doing the running, and uh, and actually getting there to yeah, to take on anything at all, sort of thing. It seems strange now, yeah. It's strange that we would go ahead and try and do something like that. But at the time, of course, like most youngsters, we just felt we could do anything anyway. In actual fact, I sort of thought that I could do more than what I knew than what I actually could. So that was quite funny. It was quite funny. I can't remember the actual first event that I took part in. I believe that was a club event of some sort, but I don't know what it was. Um, it probably was a track event towards the end of the summer, but I can't remember exactly what that was. And then going into the winter, we did start taking part in the cross country events that were going on. I'm trying to think that. The first ones of those would have been North Midlands. So yeah, it would have. So the first actual event that I can remember as a specific event that I would have taken part in would have been the North Midlands cross country, and that was at Derby at Markeaton Park. So that would have been my first cross country event. Although, like most of them said at the time, Parkland isn't cross country, but it was. Um, not an exceptionally difficult course, but it was sort of tough because of it was where you realised that you're actually going to be racing, not just the runners that you'd run with, uh, which were the road runners that didn't train on the track, but also taking part were the athletes from the track as well. Um, Generally, they'd always do by far shorter distance than we do on the road, so we were better for the longer events on the cross country, but the speed that the track athletes had was enough to sort of make some of them better than we were for the distance on the cross country. So that was cool. I mean that was quite fun. So trying, I can't remember any positions on that because of the competition at that time for anywhere in any events was very very high. I would have been probably around about 70 or 80th and something like that, I think, at that time, which is only about out of around about 160 to 200 runners. So, so this was basically the start. I can't think of the other events, the other actual cross country race. One of them would have been at Wollaton Park because they always had on the North Midlands League. They've always used Wollaton Park for most of the league races. The other places I can't think of them at the moment. But yeah, that's partly because I'm trying to think of what I might be saying next and whatever. So this is uh, this is different. This is different because of I'm not wholly talking about animals that I usually do. So I'll come back a little bit to the animal side, and I'll come back to the food side. And one of the other things that I started to sort of realize, for food wise, was that because I'd gone vegetarian, most of the ready meals or whatever that I had, or any meals that we had out anywhere, the vegetarian meals were made nearly always a cheese based food item. And I quickly realized that over a couple of years of being vegetarian at that time, it was noticeable that was causing, because of was having more cheese than usual because of going vegetarian. It that was noticeable that there was tummy issues, just little bits of upset, and just a little bit of discomfort. That was all. It wasn't anything. There wasn't anything really bad. It was just noticeable discomfort, mainly after having the cheese items. And so after about 2 or 3 years, after about 2 or 3 years of being vegetarian, I vastly reduced the cheese meals. I'm pretty sure I got them down to below one of those cheese meals a week. Um, Certainly by about 4 or 5 years into it, because of it was obvious that you just couldn't have that much cheese. I mean, practically on many days in the first couple of years, it would have been cheese on an almost daily basis in some way or other. If it wasn't in sandwiches, it might be on the meal. Um, yeah, and obviously I'd no thought about how to go about making stuff myself, sort of thing. So I relied on my parents making stuff, uh, or ready meal or ready meal of some sort. Obviously, they were really new at that time, ready meals, because of there wasn't that many. But and of course, the few that there were, they were basic. So I went on to that. But yeah, that helped to improve my health even more again when I did reduce the cheese items. Definitely, there was an obvious benefit to reducing the cheese. The only other things that I was having at the time, oh yeah, that's it. There, McDonald's had not long started up. There wasn't a McDonald there wasn't even a McDonald's in the town where I lived at the time. There was no McDonald's. Uh, the only time I realised there was that when I first saw McDonald's was actually in Sheffield. That was the very first time I saw a McDonald's. That's when I went out there. Yeah, it seems strange now that there was absolute. I don't think McDonald's appeared in Worksop until late 80s. Hmm. Was it? It can't have been late 80s, surely. It was somewhere in the 80s anyway, that McDonald's arrived. But yeah, the only other place I came across it was in Sheffield, and of course at that time it was right on the edge at the time before of where I went vegetarian, because I was about 17 or 18, and I'd go across on the train to Sheffield once every weekend, sort of thing. Um, yeah, so yeah, at that time I would have been having the burgers from there. So, and I knew that wasn't good. I knew for a start they weren't good. And I think it was there that what with the connection with doing the runs that took me past the farm fields and whatever, and certainly realizing that right there was an animal that I'd run past on the burger. That was the actual point where I made the full connection that clicked in my mind. See, why is there an animal there? And that was so, compared to what McDonald's does for most customers. At that point, McDonald's actually caused my realization that I shouldn't even be having it. So at that time, yeah, yeah, I hadn't even actually thought that before, but that is where it was. It's thinking about it now. That is where I actually realized what was wrong on that part anyway. Yeah, it's massively, yeah. So I got to that point. I got there. I got that. That's right. Yeah, thinking about it, going back there, it does take that thinking about it to actually come up with the answers as to where things might have happened. And probably there may be other things that I could talk about eventually with going further back that may make a connection as to where the actual first time I realised that what I was actually eating was an animal. You see, when we're brought up, it was like I was saying, because I think I mentioned this at the time, just a little bit earlier, that I said that apart from parents and friends sort of saying get you have your meat and stuff and mentioning the health benefits and whatever, that was then reinforced with the media, TV, mostly in adverts and whatever, suggesting that meat is good for you, milk is good for you, you should be having this, should be having that, and also reinforced again through posters all over the town, everywhere as they are now as well. Uh, uh, because it's so not seem to be normal everywhere, there was no way of without really thinking about it deep down. There was no way of looking outside of it and seeing that really that it's wrong. It's wrong to be harming animals. Um, another thing that really had an effect as well, and I probably did see this before, but I think I only noticed it around about the time that I was going vegan as well, vegetarian as well, and that was the local abattoir. Because at that time in Worksop, the actual abattoir where um, yes, it was an abattoir. It was a slaughterhouse. Yes, in Worksop, and this was always close to the town centre. So whenever you walked past, you would hear the animals. You would hear them screeching out, whatever. I do not know whether I ever went past there at the time of that they were actually killing them or not, but there was enough noise that maybe that was actually happening. And yeah, that because that would have been because of although I'd been past the slaughterhouse while still at school, I had not uh, really noticed what it was. I didn't really know that it was a slaughterhouse at all at that time. It was only a few years later when I started work that I would walk past on my way to work, or when I started running past. Then I noticed that was what the slaughterhouse was. The animals were actually dying in there. Uh, yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, this is not generally known to people that are around. Even probably since the 90s, people have not known that most slaughters and abattoirs were actually within their towns, and their move out was a deliberate thing by the farming industry in when they realized that people were actually noticing that those slaughterhouses were in the towns, and it was reduced it was an hindrance to people consuming their bodies. So the move there was a general systematic alteration of the industry that removed slaughterhouses from all towns so that they were out of sight and out of mind. And that was definitely so. I mean, those places, they were not even properly sort of sheltered at all. There were gaps in them where you could look through. I never did that you could look through. But yes, so anyway, uh, right, yes, yeah. So I'm wondering whether to go on anymore now because of, like I say, I'm just doing this as a trial. Just seeing that I'm having some sort of continuous conversation. So I'll probably upload this and then watch it and see what I think about how I'm doing. Um, uh, Obviously, if somebody wants to ever mention anything at all, just mention it. I'll leave it up on my content stream and yeah, see it like that. See just and if well, if of course if anybody decides to look at it, just leave a comment to say what you think of it. Uh, I think I will leave it at that for now. Um, yeah, what time is it? It's 10:30. Yes, I think I had better get some sleep. So, hopefully that's fine for now. I will pop off for now and do another thing and do another, probably try another stream another time and hopefully get something a bit more organized again. See what happens. Bye for now. Bye.